Everybody wants that dreamy, cinematic, hazy look. But should you spend $150 on a filter, fake it in post, or just use this free trick in Davinci Resolve? Well, today we'll be putting them to the test and find out which one is the best option. To keep things fair, we're testing them in 3 different lighting conditions and ranking them on realism, flexibility, and cost. This will allow us to compare them and rank them so we can find a clear winner. A big giveaway that footage is digital is the overly sharp, ultra clean look. Diffusion helps soften that edge, creating smoother highlights, gentler skin tones, and a more organic filmic texture. Physical mist filters, digital plugins, and custom node setups all aim to achieve this look, but they work in very different ways. So which one actually does the best job? First up, classic glass filters. I'm testing 2 of the most popular ones, Tiffen's Black Pro Mist 1/4 and Prism Lens Effects Dream FX. Tiffen's Black Pro Mist is subtle, smoothing out highlights and skin tones without going overboard. Prism Lens Effects, on the other hand, leans more into the dreamy, ethereal look. But here's the catch. Once you use a physical filter, you're locked in. If it's too strong, too bad. If colors get muddy, can't fix that in post. So what if you could get the same effect but with full control in post? That's where digital plugins come in. For this video, we'll be looking at Hazy, which is a plugin by FilmConvert. Let's break down exactly how to apply Hazy in Davinci Resolve and fine-tune it for the best results. So you'll want to open Davinci Resolve and go to your color page. You want to select your clip and create a new serial node. You'll want to drag Hazy by FilmConvert and drop it on your node. Under Hazy settings, you have a few different options: manufacturer, input gamma, filter style, and filter strength. So manufacturer will be the camera that you're using. In this case, I'm using a Sony FX3 and I'm shooting in S-Log3. And then for filter style and filter strength, you have a few different options, which are pre-made presets that the team at FilmConvert created for our ease of use. They created these after their favorite cinematic effects. So you have Black Pro Mist, Bloom, Diffusion, Glimmer, Haze, Edge Glow, Pearlescent, Pro Mist, Soft, Smoke, and Smooth. Black Pro Mist will be a lot more like a regular filter. And if we choose it, you can see that they also created presets for the filter strength based off of the different variations that there are of the Tiffen Black Pro Mist. For the strengths, you have 1/8, 1/4, 1/2, and 1. And then you have sliders for the intensity and spread. The intensity slider goes from 0 to 100. It controls the overall strength. The spread slider adjusts how far the glow diffuses. Lower spread means tight, controlled highlights. Higher spread equals soft, cinematic haze. For a cinematic look, keep intensity between 30 to 60% and spread low to mid. You can enable the white balance controls to shift the mist color, warm it up for a golden glow, sunset vibes, and then you can cool it down for a moody blue haze. You can also adjust the saturation, and that controls how much color the glow picks up. For a classic film look, add a slight warm tint and lower saturation a bit. The exposure slider controls the brightness of the mist, and then you can also adjust the RGB channels for selective glow colorization. Cranking exposure up creates that dreamy, fantasy look, but you also want to keep it natural. The tone mapping slider can be used to increase or decrease the contribution of the tone mapping stage, and you can optionally disable the tone mapping completely if need be with the enable toggle switch. The qualify slider controls what parts of your image are affected by the above exposure controls. Move to the left to control only highlights, or to the right to affect down to middle gray. Enabling diffusion map helps you visualize where the mist is applied. And as you can see, our image has kind of inverted, and this is basically just showing us where the mist is being applied. Fine-tune settings to control diffusion so that it only affects the highlights or skin tones. So if we go ahead and toggle Hazy on and off, then you can see how our highlights are definitely blooming and it's softening those parts of our image. There's not much of a wrong way to go about it. It really just depends on your scene and how you want the effect to help you tell your story better. So where does this effect really shine? I like to use this effect on portraits and beauty shots because it softens skin and it adds a flattering glow. You can also use it on cinematic night scenes because it enhances neon lights and street lights, or you can use it on a dreamy aesthetic video. It will be perfect for that nostalgic or artistic storytelling. Also, as a bonus, FilmConvert has a Halation plugin that you can use paired with Hazy, and this is what that looks like. So pretty similar to Hazy with a few less controls. So you have the manufacturer, I'll choose Sony S-Log3, and the cool thing about it is that you can toggle do halation alone, which will show you the areas where halation is being applied, and that is those highlights and edges where you'll see that red glow. If you want to learn more about halation, then check out this video that I made previously where I tested different halation methods in Davinci Resolve. If I would have had this plugin back then, I would have definitely included it in the list, and I think it would have been a really great addition. So I haven't gotten to test it too much, but I am excited to dive into it. So once again, it has your sensitivity, strength, hue, and a soften slider. Then you have advanced settings, which you can enable, and it has highlights, green channel, brightness, saturation, spread, and boost. And this is a really great plugin. You can customize the crap out of it. So I usually like increasing the strength a little bit so that I can actually see what it's doing to my image. And if I zoom in here and I toggle it on and off, then you can see what it's doing. I also like changing the hue to be a little bit more neutral and bringing down the saturation so that it's more of a subtle effect. Then I like bring the strength down, and let's zoom out, toggle on and off, and I like that quite a lot. Kind of just adds a warmth to the highlights rather than that very prominent red halation. It's just a stylistic choice. I don't like the halation to be too extreme. I like it to be more of an accent to warm up my highlights. So with that said, let's dive into the third way in which you can achieve the cinematic glow effect for your footage. So we'll create a custom bloom and halation effect using color space transforms, layer mixer, and curves. Now I've shown this method before on a previous video, but I figured it would be worth mentioning again since it's such a great way to achieve halation and bloom without having to use an external plugin. Let me show you guys how you can achieve this effect if you do it from scratch. The first thing that we'll want to know is the color space transform that I got going on my node tree. So in this case, my input color space is Sony S-Gamma3 Cine and Sony S-Log3 because I'm shooting on a Sony FX3. And for the output color space, I have it to use my timeline, which is just regular Rec 709. And then for the output gamma, I'm converting to Cine film log for this particular shot. On my previous video, I had it converting to RE log C3 and RE wide gamma 3. But again, that was a different shot. For this particular one, we'll be working on Cine film log, and therefore we'll set up our node tree for the halation accordingly. So the first thing that I'll want to do is create a compound node to keep things clean and organized. So I'll create an extra node, take these two, go down and create a compound node, then double click it. Now we have two nodes right here, our beginning and end of the node tree. We're gonna name our first one to linear and our end one to log. And in between, we're gonna add a node and it'll be a layer mixer. We're gonna attach it here and we're gonna change the composite mode to add. Then we're gonna go ahead and add another node, attach it to our first to linear node, and then attach it to the layer mixer. You'll see that the image got super bright and blown out. So we're gonna go ahead and add another node and we're gonna put it at the top like this. So this is what our node tree should be looking like. You'll be able to see that yes, our image is super blown out, and that's okay, don't freak out. I'm gonna show you what to do with each one of the nodes. So for our first node, we're gonna go ahead and add a color space transform. Now on the color space transform node, we're gonna take the input color space and input gamma from when we color space transformed at the beginning of our node tree. Stay with me here, don't get too confused. So we're gonna leave input color space as use timeline, and our input gamma, we're gonna select Cine film log. Now for our output color space and our output gamma, we're gonna go ahead and select RE wide gamma 3. And for our output gamma, we're gonna change use timeline to linear. Now, our image is gonna look crazy, maybe even crazier than before, but stick with me. For our end node, which is to log, we're gonna go ahead and add another color space transform. And this time we're gonna do essentially the reverse. So we're gonna take the RE wide gamma 3 for the input color space. We're gonna change this to linear. And then we're gonna leave output color space as use timeline, and output gamma, we're gonna change it back to scene in film lock. Now, our image is maybe not as blown out, but it's still brighter than it was before. If I go ahead and go back and deselect the node, then you can see how much it's brightening up our image. So we don't want it to do that. We only want it to affect the highlights. So I'm gonna show you guys how you do that within this node tree. First, we're gonna change the name of this node and label it original. That's our original image untouched. And then down here, we're gonna name this high pass key. This node is now in charge of selecting only the brightest parts of our image, which are the ones that are gonna get the effect of bloom and halation. Now on this node, we're gonna work with the curves, and I want you guys to follow exactly what I do so that you can get the same effect. So now you're gonna grab all the curves, YRGB, all the way to the bottom. And you're gonna see that our image is gonna get darker. If I disable it and enable it, you can see that nothing's happening to the image because nothing is being selected to get brightened up. Now we're gonna create a point right around here, and then we're gonna unlink the YRGB curves. We're gonna take our red curve and we're gonna raise it all the way up here, right around there. We're gonna take our Y and raise it up right around there. Green, raise it up just below it. Now, once we have our curve set up this way, we're gonna go ahead and click on the blur tab. And this is how you're gonna manage that spread and bloom of the highlights. And you'll see how prominent the halation and bloom effect becomes here. So if I take it from 0.50 and I raise it all the way, then you can see those highlights really bloom in there. If I bring it all the way down, then you can see how it goes away. Now, I'm gonna reset it to 0.50. You really don't want to go too crazy with this, but you can experiment a little bit. I like to keep it somewhere around 0.62, and then I like going to the key tab and I like bringing that back down to around 0.800, and that sort of puts a cap on it, makes it limited so that it doesn't become too crazy. But there you go. You have a halation and bloom effect, and if I toggle it on and then off, you can see that it's really warming up those highlights. And the way you would change the colors of the halation and bloom is you would go to your curves again, and you see how we raised this red curve. If I put it up, you can see the effect becoming really warm and red, almost magenta. But if I bring it down, then you'll see that the color of it will change. If you take the green curve and you raise it up, and you'll see that there's a lot of teal in those highlights, which you don't really want. And then if I take the blue and I raise it up, then it'll cool down those highlights quite a lot. Now, normally I like to keep it this way, but I also like to bring down the red curves and raise up the regular curves so that you can brighten up those blooms and highlights. I like to park it somewhere around here like this, where it's not too crazy. That's on and this is off. And again, if we want the bloom to be more prominent, you'll raise your radius and make that spread even bigger. Now that we've tested everything, what's the best method for achieving that cinematic glow? Honestly, it depends on your project and taste, but here's how I'd rank them. The black room is filter, realism, 5 stars. Nothing beats that in-camera effect. Flexibility, 2 stars. Once it's baked in, it's permanent. Cost, 3 stars. At $125, it's not cheap. Overall, 3.3 out of 5. I've shot with these and I regret having that look locked in forever. FilmConvert Hazy filter. Realism, 4 stars. Still digital, but looks great. Flexibility, 5 stars. 1 click on, 1 click off, tons of presets. Cost, 4 stars. $100 plus you can bundle it with halation tools. Overall, 4.0 out of 5. Custom node tree in Davinci Resolve. Realism, 4 stars. Surprisingly natural with the right tweaks. Flexibility, 4 stars. Fully customizable and upgradable. Cost, 5 stars. Technically free if you already have Davinci Studio. Overall, 4.3 out of 5. So, what's the verdict? If you want the most organic and camera look, go with the filter. If you want speed and flexibility, FilmConvert delivers. If you're already in Resolve and you're willing to tinker, build your own node tree. It's powerful and free. So let me know in the comments which one you'll go for. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and if you want to learn how to get perfect skin tones every single time in Davinci Resolve, go ahead and watch this video right here.